Hi, this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. One of the most fun times in my adult life is when I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with one of my friends. I met the guy as we were singing together in Toronto Mass Choir. We both were totally broke because we were in our young 20s, needed a place to live, couldn't afford to be on our own. And so we basically just shared the rent. And then sometimes at the end of the week, we would pool our money together, cross our fingers, and hope we had enough to buy food for the week and go shopping. It was cool. His name's Vic. My name's Rick. And we got our super to put on the buzzer ICS, Ick, so that we didn't have to choose a name to put on the buzzer when people were coming by to see us. It would be Rick or Vic. They just choose Ick, and that would be us. It became easy for us to share an apartment together. We understood that we needed to give each other space. We understood that we needed to share everything. Otherwise, we'd find ourselves outside and starving. We had an understanding. And part of that understanding meant that we just chose to put up with each other. We're actually two very different guys. We're not very similar. But we chose to put up with each other. And that led to us having a blast for a couple of years. What about you? As you think about spending an extended time with a friend or a group of people, who was the easiest person or group of people for you to put up with? This video is based on my interpretation of Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. In this text, we see something about how important it is just to put up with each other. Ephesians 4, 1 through 4. Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you have been called to one glorious hope for the future. Here's the point I'm going to try to make in this video. It is essential for us to put up with each other. There's so much as part of our lives that requires us to just put up with other people. I mean, where we work, we may not get along with everybody. Where we live, we may not get along with all of our neighbors. And maybe we don't even want to say hi to some of our neighbors. Where we go shopping, there might be people in that place where we're buying stuff that we would like not to recognize us because we just don't want to get into a conversation. So much of our lives require us to just put up with each other, because we got to share space with so many other people. Actually, it is an essential part of the experience of living as a Jesus follower. Putting up with each other isn't just something that, oh man, I got to suck it up and do it. Putting up with each other is actually a command. There are 2 parts of this text that I want to draw your attention to that help me make the point around how essential it is for us to put up with each other. Here's the first point I want to make. You are called to a calling. That's right. It's a double calling. The text says, I beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. A cool way of saying this is that you're called to a calling. Or to expand on that a little bit, God has called you. I mean that Jesus came, died, rose again, has extended the offer of friendship for you to be in community with him. He's done that for each of us. So God has called us. God has called you to himself. And that calling to be in relationship with God comes with a purpose. It's not just to give each other high fives for being part of the cool kids club in God's family. It's a calling to live in a way that represents ourselves. You represent yourself as someone who belongs to God, who loves everyone. We're called by God to live a life that expresses love for him and also for others. You're called to a calling, and that calling is to love God and love others. Now, we've seen this directive before in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We've seen this from Jesus himself. When Jesus was asked to point out which is the greatest commandment in the Old Testament, Jesus replied that there are actually 2, and they're both just as important. Love God first, and then love others as yourself. God calls us into a loving relationship, to act lovingly to others. This is not new information. And I think the big deal word in this passage, because this isn't new information, the big deal word in this passage, as I see it, is the word beg. Paul, the apostle, the writer of Ephesians, this guy is a big deal. He was a big deal back in his day, and he's still a big deal in this day. This big deal guy is confessing a weakness here. He has no power over us to compel us to do anything at all, particularly to do what's essential for us. He probably wishes he could compel us to do what we need to do, but he can't, and he knows it. But this is so very important. I mean, in the Gospels, this is basically straight from Jesus' own mouth. This really matters. And so Paul, this big deal guy, he uses the word beg. It's so important us to get this idea that we're called to a calling, that we're called into a relationship in order to be in relationship with others. We're called to love God and to love others. So important that Paul, big deal guy, uses the word beg. I beg you to take this seriously. It is that important that I'm begging. And so I'm not going to use the word beg. I'm going to use the word reflect. If this is such a big deal that Paul uses the word beg to get our attention to something that's really important, then maybe it's a good idea for you and I to do some personal reflection on how well we're doing it here. I mean, you and I are called into a relationship with God where God needs to be our first love. And I mean, I love lots of stuff. I love board games. And I mean that. I'm not joking about that. I really do. I love my digital pinball table, my digital pinball DIY project. I love it. It's very cool. I love my Harley. I love my family. I love being alive. And for some reason, I also love chicken strips. I have no idea why I love chicken strips, but if there's anything that can cause me to fail a diet, it's the sight of chicken strips. I can't even taste. I have no idea why I love it. I love lots of stuff. And above all those things that I love, God needs to be my very first love. Jesus needs to be my first love and yours too. Okay, so this is the easy part. I mean, it's not totally easy, but at least it's easily understandable. We get this, that we need to love God. But man, equally as important, we're called to a calling. We're not just called to love God. We're called to a calling, which is to love others like God loves others. We're called into a relationship with God where we love Him, and we're called into a lifestyle where we love others in a way that demonstrates God's love to everyone. So apparently, it's important that I love you too. That's part of the calling. That's what I'm called to. That's what you're called to. I wish Paul would give me a tip on how to make that possible. I mean, what does it even look like that we're all supposed to love each other? Well, guess what? Thankfully, he did give us a tip. It's in the text. It's the whole reason for this video, why I'm talking to you right now. Here's my second point. Put up with each other, which is the main point that I'm talking about. The text is making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Now, we can look in the text at the words humble and gentle and patient and unity. Those are all good words. This is the big thing that's jumping out to me, though. Put up with each other. How do I love you? How do you love me? How do I love the people around me that bug me and I prefer not to spend too much time around them? Put up with them. I love it. We've got a 2,000-year-old suck it up, buttercup, right here in the text. In couples counseling, I often refer to something called MBTI scores. It's a personality test that discerns strengths and then helps a couple figure out how to recognize their different strengths and figure out how to work together. Simple personality tests reveal one simple truth. We're all different. We have our uniquenesses. Yes, we're all alike in a lot of ways, but those ways that we're alike, those ways where we seem to be alike, we miss a lot of covert uniquenesses. There's no way we could ever truly understand everything about each other. So what do we do about all our differences? Well, we get over ourselves and we put up with each other. Love is a choice. We choose that we're going to love. Then we act in a way that puts up with each other. That's what love looks like. We don't put up with each other first and then discern who's worth loving. That's backwards. And we probably understand that right away. We make the choice that we're going to love. And since our capacity to love is pretty small, our choice is to turn our own self-interest off and just put up with each other. I can't possibly love everyone the way I love my wife and my kids. Just like you, I've got limited capacity. There's not enough energy locked inside of me to treat everyone at the same capacity as I treat my kids. But I can turn off my own self-interest and choose to put up with the people around me, which looks like being gentle and patient and humble. Okay, so here's the takeaway for today. We're called into a calling. We're called to love God above everything else we love. And in that relationship, the calling is to treat others lovingly, demonstrating the love that God has for all of us. Tall order with a simple takeaway. Turn off your self-interest and put up with everyone. Looking forward to hearing how you interpreted this passage this week when we meet on Zoom. So that's it from me to you. For now, would you please like, would you please share, would you please subscribe and ask for the link? We've changed our meeting times. We're not meeting at 10:30 a.m. anymore. It looks like it works better for the group to meet at 1:30 p.m. instead. So this coming Sunday, beginning this Sunday, and we're going to experiment with this a little bit, we now meet at 1:30 for everyone and 6 o'clock just for guys. Ask for the link if you want to join us. For community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. I'll see you next time.